Alright, I've got various stuffed animals here for moral support, as well as Sarge, and I don't necessarily know why I feel like I need moral support, but I think this diagnosis, out of all the ones that I've been given, is maybe a little bit more stigmatized, so be patient, bear with me, I will explain. That's the intro. So a few weeks ago, I was going to make a video about intrusive thoughts. I was starting a new series called Let's Talk, where I talk about more difficult aspects of mental health. And I guess this could be the first episode because I tried to film that and it was hard. It was really hard. But when I looked up intrusive thoughts in my very basic research, so this might not be 100%, what came up first is that they're a symptom of obsessive-compulsive disorder, more commonly known as OCD. Maybe my life's just a movie and this is foreshadowing, but yeah. So then I watched Jessica Kelvin-Fozard's video on obsessive-compulsive disorder. I gotta just say OCD, it's too long otherwise, which I will link down below and put a card in. And I was watching it and I was like, this stuff kind of sounds like me, but I don't have compulsions, but I get obsessions. I think I made this kind of clear. I'll go into more examples later, but yeah, my anxiety is always centered around obsessions as well as more general fear. So this isn't overtaking my generalized anxiety diagnosis. I just have both because I'm cool, right? So anyway, I watched that video. It's about 40 minutes. It's very informative. Jessica doesn't have OCD, but she made it in, not accordance, cooperation, I guess, with two creators on YouTube who do have OCD. So they give a little bit more insight about their experiences and she does a very good job explaining it. So I saw that and I was like, clearly YouTube has been really helpful for me for figuring out various diagnoses, mental and physical, which is kind of odd, but I mean, great for the internet, I guess. So yeah, I guess that's useful. So I went to NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, which is actually where I went to try and find more info on intrusive thoughts, to give you guys a basic definition and overview of OCD in case you didn't know. So NAMI lists OCD as characterized by repetitive, unwanted, intrusive thoughts, obsessions, and irrational excessive urges to do certain actions, compulsions. Although people with OCD may know that their thoughts and behavior don't make sense, they're often unable to stop them. Symptoms typically begin during childhood, the teenage years, or young adults, although males often develop them at a younger age than females, and 1.2% of US adults experience OCD each year. Moving on to the symptoms section, it says, most people have occasional obsessive thoughts or compulsive behaviors. In an obsessive-compulsive disorder, however, these symptoms generally last more than an hour each day and interfere with daily life. Obsessions are intrusive, irrational thoughts or impulses that repeatedly occur. People with these disorders know that these thoughts are irrational, but they are afraid that somehow they might be true. These thoughts and impulses are upsetting and people may try to ignore or suppress them. Examples include, I'm going to try to just include the least triggering of the symptoms because I don't want to, make anything worse. So doubts about having done something right, like turning off the stove or locking a door, or fears of saying or shouting inappropriate things in public. Compulsions are repetitive acts that temporarily relieve the stress brought on by an obsession. People with these disorders know that these rituals don't make sense, but feel that they must perform them in order to relieve the anxiety and in some cases to prevent something bad from happening. Like obsessions, people may try not to perform compulsive acts, but feel forced to do so to relieve anxiety. And examples, the hand washing from a fear of germs, mental checking to see if the thing that you think you didn't do is done. So for example, checking that a door is locked. And then causes are unknown, but their activity in several parts of the brain is believed. So they might not respond normally to serotonin. And there's also a very big genetic component. So if you, your parent, or a sibling have OCD, there's around a 25% chance that your immediate family member will have it. OCD is then treated with medication and psychotherapy, which I will go into now. OCD is really hard to talk about because, as you may have guessed from what I just read, the obsessions can often be very horrifying or embarrassing, and so they're really hard to admit. And compulsions can also be seen as embarrassing. So a lot of people don't bring up that because they don't want to, scare other people or look too weird or whatever. So after I saw the video, I went to my therapist and brought this up. And actually I emailed her and she agreed that it would be something to be worth looking into. And then I looked up OCD in the library and I read a book called Being Me with OCD by Allison Dotson, which is a book written for young adults about living with OCD, her personal story, as well as various young adults' personal stories, and then advice on how to do things like get therapy and medication, general sort of reassurances. But that book had a checklist, which I'm pretty sure was just from the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual for mental illnesses, of what kind of symptoms you might have. So I did that. Well, I looked at it and then I thought it would be fun to check them off. And I had over half. So in my most recent therapy appointment, my therapist confirmed that that was actually something she had clocked even before my bringing it up as a potential diagnosis. And after going through the checklist and reading the DSM-5, we confirmed that, yeah, obsessive-compulsive disorder is going in my file. So yeah, it was kind of a relief to get the diagnosis. On the one hand, I really enjoy being right when I diagnose myself. But on the other hand, it just felt right because I'd always noticed that my anxiety didn't seem like other people's anxiety, if that makes sense. Because I always, like I said, had very specific topics that would keep me up for hours and hours and hours and hours. So when I was 12, I read Twilight and some Buffy the Vampire Slayer books, and it switched to vampires. Before that, it had been dentists, and I was obsessed. And I used to call these obsessions as well, so I don't know why I didn't put this together sooner. But I would lay awake at night, terrified that somebody would like bite one of my parents, and then they'd come home and be a vampire, and I wouldn't know, and then, bloodshed and death would occur. Even so far as thinking like the cats could be vampires at one point. And on the one hand, I knew that this wasn't rational, but on the other hand, it was like, but it could be. So I remember for that particular obsession, what did I do? So I was awake a lot, and then I think I went to church, and then something in my head was like, Jesus stops vampires. So I did a lot of praying, and I wore this cross bracelet, but then that broke in gym class in elementary school, which I still remember. I was doing jump roping, and it like came off my wrist onto the jump rope and then smashed. And I freaked out. But I think around there, or eventually it diminished. Like, I'm not scared of vampires anymore. But I don't entirely recall how. But that's kind of how it is for a lot of my obsessions. Is they're huge, they're massive, they're terrifying. They're all I can think about, and then they're just kind of fading away. So initially when I went in, I kind of thought that I only had what's called pure O, so just obsession OCD, no compulsions, but no, I have compulsions too. I think what's kind of difficult for people to understand is, so if you look at the most general idea of OCD, it's just being clean, right? Being a clean freak. That's not true at all. I personally don't have any obsessions revolving around cleanliness or germs. I'm not even a particularly clean person, although I do have a very strong like perfectionist obsession. So it's not necessarily always about being clean, but for example, my bed isn't made right now, and it's fine to make your bed, but there's a part of me that really wants to make it and make it so that it's completely even and you can't see any of the sheets and that the blankets are all spread out and that it looks perfect. I don't know if that makes sense. And my current therapy for my therapist is to try and fight those urges, but it's like an itch. And at first, itches aren't very annoying, right? Like, they're a little bit like, oh, but then if you try to push it off, it becomes stronger and stronger. And this particular thing is quite a mild one for me, so I don't feel too weird describing it, but eventually it's like screaming. And you can't stop the feeling until you do the thing, which is the compulsion. So that could be fixing the bed. It could be I have ones that revolve around like researching. Okay, this one's embarrassing. So I read somewhere that it was useful to fight depression to change your phone background every couple weeks, right? So I thought that would be fun. It became an obsession. So I would obsess for hours about which pictures would go on my background and how, if they didn't feel right, then I had to keep changing them. And I had to like match my case and match this. And then I got the update for my phone for iOS 14, right? And you have the widgets. So you can have like little pictures inside of your phone background picture. That takes hours. And it doesn't always happen, but sometimes I'll do it because I think it'll like relieve stress. But once I start doing it, I can't stop until it feels right. And I don't know how to describe that beyond saying it has to feel right. So I could start this, like when I first found out about it, I was 14, I looked up some inspiration. I think I spent 3 to 4 hours doing that, like perfecting it. And this was at night. So it went till about 1 or 2 in the morning. And that's just how it is. I don't know. It's like that. So I also get intrusive thoughts, and these can be varying things from like saying, you should really say this thing. Like I remember being a really little kid and having like really bad words in my head, which I'm pretty sure were like jerk and stupid. And I just wanted to say them out loud. And I think I did because I was alone, but I don't entirely remember because I think I was 5. But yeah, I also get common intrusive thoughts that I do experience sometimes relate to like harming yourself. They call it the call of the void, which I think is common, that everybody gets, like you're in a high place and you feel like you want to jump off. But these sort of intrusive thoughts are a lot more consistent and a lot more like distressing to the person. But I don't have any compulsions relating to stopping those, if that makes sense. So the other part of OCD that I don't really relate to, that I think is also commonly portrayed in media, even if it's a bit more accurate, is patterns. So a lot of compulsions revolve around doing a thing a certain amount of times so that it feels right. So locking the door 3 times, let's say, or counting your words so that you only end on an even amount of words when you end a sentence, or any of them. Compulsions can be very elaborate or they can be very simple. For me, they don't manifest. Like I had read books, like biographies about people with OCD, and I knew it was more than just cleanliness, but I didn't have any of these elaborate patterns and compulsions, so I would never have connected to myself. But here we are. Yeah, I'm not comfortable talking about my current ones because it's embarrassing, and it's also really hard, and it's also triggering, and I don't want to get stuck. That's just what I call it, getting stuck, where I will be in an obsessive spiral for hours sometimes. And I'm working on like developing plans and stuff so that if I get caught in one, there are ways to get out of it. But it's hard, and every part of your brain is screaming at you to just give in to the compulsion. So it's not easy. And I like that my therapist emphasizes that my current therapy is, well, part of it, my homework essentially, is to note a couple of damaging behaviors that I have, and then note if I submit to them or if I resist them. So basically if I do the thing or I don't do the thing. But my therapist was very big on that. Like, you shouldn't beat yourself up if you don't, if you submit, because this is something that's so ingrained that it's not going to go away overnight. And since perfectionism is one of my issues, the instinct is to beat myself up. So I'm resisting that. And I only started tracking them today, so I'm curious to see how I will improve. And today I've done well. So I had the bed thing, and so far I've had 3 instances of having my brain go, you have to fix your bed, you have to fix your bed, you have to fix your bed. And I haven't yet, so that's good for me, I suppose. I think the most obvious, like textbook compulsion and obsession I had was that when I was living alone, so when I went to bed, I'd have to check that the door was locked, and I don't know if you heard, Sarge just coughed. But yeah, so it was dark, I'd have to go to bed, check that the door was locked, and then every time I got up out of my bed to use the bathroom or get a snack or whatever, I'd have to check again, because it was like this feeling that maybe I forgot, and then, you know, someone could come in. So I had to keep doing that, like over and over and over and over and over. And that actually continued for a little bit when I moved back in with my parents, but now I've broken that one. Possibly because it's a pain in the ass to get to the doors. It's on a different floor here, so that involves stairs. But also, yeah, I've managed to break that one. It wasn't a very long-lasting obsession or compulsion, which helps, because a lot of mine are much deeper, like deep-rooted issues, and those are a lot harder to break. But yeah, I guess I made this video because I like keeping you all updated on my medical situation, since that's kind of what this channel was created for back when it was that chronic illness life. So I thought, hi, I still, you know, I function in society. I don't fit any of the stereotypes for OCD. I don't wash my hands constantly. I don't have any of the pattern compulsions. Have it. So I don't know how to end this, but I hope this helps somebody. And if you're interested in more of my Let's Talk series, where I discuss the less not palatable, but the less, yeah, the less frequently discussed parts of mental illness, maybe the more unpleasant parts, let me know in the comments and I would be happy to oblige. I'm definitely going to have strict boundaries about how personal I'm going to get with things like these, because this is the internet. You all don't need to know the things that make me obsess for hours at night, but I will be happy to talk about things as much as I feel comfortable. Anyway, I hope you all are having a great weekend and I will see you soon. Bye.